to the SDGs in a capsule. Today we are going to learn about Goal 11, which aims to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. We have today with us Ms. Rukaiya Joshi, who will enlighten us on the topic sustainable cities and communities in India, what needs to be done with reference to the SDGs. Over to Rukaiya. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Nayan, for inviting. And friends, this is one of the major goals, the sustainable 17 goals that the world has to achieve by 2030. And particularly for the countries which are developing, like India, we need to see how we are going to progress in next 10 years for achieving the target. When we are talking about sustainable cities, it comes under the economic aspect of the goals which have been set up by the United Nations. But they have a link to the next two goals, very direct link, which is about goal 12, which is about sustainable consumption. And the next is about environment. So we will not be able to isolate this particular goal without that. And of course, as it is that goal number 17 is going to be most important. When it comes to cities, when we're talking about collaboration, internationally, a large amount of focus has been given by government and the corporates. These are the main two stakeholders who are going to become responsible for making this available, and the local government, so whatever the countries and in India, whatever the setup is. To begin with, I want to tell you that for achieving this particular goal, government Niti Aayog has said that the gap between whatever the resource allocation that the country has and what will be required to achieve the target is going to 36 lakh crore every year. That's a big money, and it is every year. Now the question will be, where do we get this money from? Who are the other people who are going to raise these resources? Because ultimately attaining the target is going to be important. So as I think most of us would know, there are 7 targets, but the country has gone out to keep into various, key results performance areas. And each of the states have gone out to put it up there. So today's situation is that we have about 33% plus percentage of people who are living in cities. I'm not talking about the reverse migration which has happened due to pandemic. And there is going to be some change, maybe a little positive change. I say it positive because if some people do not come back to India, the flow of constant flow of people moving from the rural India to the urban area is putting a lot of stress on the sustainability of the cities that we are talking about. And then it becomes a kind of a situation where we are not inclusive. Then somebody gets the benefit and some people do not get the benefit, and that's not what the aim of the Sustainable Development Goals has been. It is, as you rightly said, all inclusive. It is safe for all, and it has to be sort of development for all, leaving no one behind. So this becomes the kind of a question which we are, as Niti Aayog and the country, which we are taking. What we are going to talk about is what can individual do? How can individual contribute? What exactly is the mandate of the entire Sustainable 11 goal it is, and how we are going to talk about it. So first and foremost, when we talk about cities, there's a question of housing, so affordability of the housing and access, availability of the housing. So 17%, Dr. Nayan, people live in slums. And you understand whether it is Kolkata or Mumbai, the situation, the living conditions in the slums has been really poor. And we have seen that in, spread of viruses like COVID-19 can become very epidemic kind of a thing out there. And therefore, we need to really see that not many slums are there, and we are able to rehabilitate them and give them some living standards of living in the cities as that. So by 2030, it is estimated that we will have more than 10 cities which will have a population of more than 1 crore. And we will have to see how we are going to manage them. And how are we going to sort of make those cities sustainable as that? So when we are talking about the housing is the first one. Second becomes the infrastructure. Now, infrastructure means everything. It includes, the transportation. You're talking about water, electricity, all that basic amenities that you require for a sustainable living as that. And how do you provide? I mean, we have been seeing the number of metros we are increasing. Mumbai has 7 new metros planned, and we are just awaiting for them to begin. So infrastructure is a major issue. But I am again happy to say that pandemic had some positive impact. And if some of the people are going to work from home, and if they have not to travel to the workplace, to that extent, there would be a lesser burden on not only the traffic and transportation, there would also be a lesser consumption of fuel. And that may, whatever small percentage, but that's going to be definitely going to help as such. So we are also talking about open spaces. When we are talking about cities, we are not simply talking about concrete jungle. We also want there should be play space for people to go as garden areas, play areas for children, and there should be open spaces, for various activities and all that, which is very much important for the physical and mental health of the society, people who are living in that, So, and that is why this open space, and of course, one very important aspect, which is about safety and disaster management. So we have to also take care of that. The city is completely planned for disaster. So Kolkata just recently saw the natural disaster, or when you are talking about Mumbai, where we have flooding happening every year in monsoon, and then how do we go out and see that the damage? There's a proper planning and that kind of a work that is being done. So as we talk about ours, that we are talking about it, we are talking about how do we reduce consumption, and that becomes very important. So we should not ape the Western countries, is my personal opinion, of wasting food, having unnecessary things, and how do we go out and reduce. So this is where we are talking about the next goal, which is, we are talking about responsible consumption. So you reduce whatever, consumption that you have as an individual, as the economy, as the business. So how do you reduce your consumption? So what are the things that you do? Those simple things, that your taps are a sensor. So when you are not washing hands, the water flow becomes stops, kind of a thing. So that way, or electricity. So you have, the sensor lights. So in washrooms, when people are not there, there are no lights. So how do you reduce your consumption? So that becomes this thing. So then comes you recycle. How do you recycle the things? So we are talking about the recycle of plastic. Now everybody knows that is the major issue that the world is facing. I would like to share one kind of a study which I presented to you, UNGCNI, which is of ACC Limited, where they have a complete networking in certain villages in Andhra Pradesh and other states, wherever their plants are, and they collect the separated waste. So waste management, how they link to recycling, So waste management is a major issue. So how do you collect? And so they network with the not-profit organizations like NGOs, ACC Limited taking the lead. Then they network with the local government, and there is a plant. So each of the houses is given the 4 different color buckets, and in which the different kinds of waste is collected. All of us are aware, we'll not get into details about it, but that which is not recyclable, plastic which can be recycled, you can recycle, but which is not recyclable, that is taken by ACC as a fuel. Now, with this, their consumption of fuel reduces, and they have received a lot of awards. So, what I'm suggesting here is that maybe many other companies can come up and replicate this model, or
Right.
similar thing, develop their own model, whereby what can be recycled is recycled, what cannot be recycled is used as fuel, but also they create organic manure from the natural waste, the kitchen waste in particular that we are
Yes.
talking about. There is organic production is done. So with that, again, you are not dependent on, farmers are not dependent on the artificial fertilizer. So you get organic fertilizer. So how do we go around doing this? And such models need to be taken up very, very, very clearly. When we are talking about sustainable cities, of course, sanitation becomes one another important part of it. When you are talking about, there should be toilets available, and we know that the large cities, slums, do not have sanitation available. Even after we have done a lot of effort in last 5 years about improving the sanitation facilities available, the gap remains because the availability of water is not there. So, cleanliness and this thing. And again, so you talked about safety. So again, safety becomes an issue. So in 2016, I was part of the study done by University College of London, where we studied the safety aspects of women in the public toilets in cities like Delhi, Mumbai. We went out to see, are there enough number of toilets for women as much as for men? But let's say in Baspi you may have that, but if you go to maybe a bus stand, or certain such places where you, or gardens, you would find there would be toilets for men but not for women. So thereby a working woman, and particularly not a white collar kind of a job, working woman would find it very difficult to be working out for long hours without accessibility to toilets. So we have NGOs like Right to Pee to come up and talk about, take the cause of women to have the toilets availability, and then they take up this advocacy and make sure that that kind of a thing that is there. So we also have something called smart cities. You go out to help. So you have organizations, NGOs which take old newspapers, or you have organizations like Gunj, which takes up all your waste and recycles and helps in for reuse and things like that. But what do we bring about as a behavioral change? So, and behavioral change does not come, it takes at least minimum 40 days for any person to change the habit that has
Yes.
been formed with a very regular kind of an input which has been given to them and all that. So we have a lot of wrong habits as a part of our culture, and we need to really change if we need to really keep a pace with the rest of the world. We throw things, I mean, still there in cities, you will still say, even from the cars, you would see people throwing, the waste out from their cars and all that, or spitting for that matter. And it has become a major issue in pandemic. where people are they chew pan and they spit and all that. So these are the kind of issues which are there, and I think we all need to get together and bring about behavioral change. So I'm very fortunately associated with SDG Chopal, where we are taking this SDGs, all SDGs, not only 11, and 11 is very important part of it, to schools. And we are bringing about the behavioral change amongst all the school children as to that. So, in fact, what happens, when and youth, of course, both, and United Nations internationally, different countries are doing large number of efforts to try and not only correct what has been done wrong, but the moment you invest your time, energy into the young population, which India is largest today in the world of having the youngest population. So when you invest your time, energy about any SDG, SDG 11 for that matter, on the youth and build the correct behavior amongst them, as to how they reduce, recycle, how they are conscious of, sustainable consumption and
Yes.
every other way. So in that sense, you will be able to, for example, sharing cars, and carpooling, can come up as one of the behaviors. And they are young, they use technology, they use apps, and then they can just go out and sort of make that happen such that there is a sustainable cities. So this is going to be an important area of how do we in 10 years. It's a difficult task to do. Governments, local governments will have to really come forward. Corporates, CSR will have to also, set aside and work a little effort and time, energy, money for doing that in business and CSR, both ways. It is sustainability of business and also CSR. And at an individual level, whether we are adult or inculcating habits amongst children, we need to make all changes to try and make sure that the targets are attended by 2030.
Thank you so much, Rukaiya. You touched upon the basic and the most important points as well. So, yes, we keep hearing about 15-minute cities. So, the conversion is happening very fast right now, especially now with the pandemic happening. So, people are making everything so convenient that they don't have to drive a car in a city. They just can cycle and go. So, in a way, this pandemic has helped this to accelerate.
I would agree. Yeah, I
Yes.
would agree.
But again, the onus lies upon each of us right now to make this happen. It's very good to know, it's very good to see, but it's up to us to make this happen. Thank you so much for this fantastic,
Thank you.
fantastic deliberation.
Thank you.
I am sure there will be so many people who will benefit out of it. Thank you so much.